Across enemy lines, the chilling command echoed. Any captured woman was to meet a grim end. I understood that even in the same uniform, carrying the same rifle, fighting the same war, my destiny could be far more dire than any man's. From 1945 onward, the contributions of women in World War II were undeniably crucial. Nurses, radio operators, clerks, mechanics, pilots, spies. The Allied victory would have been impossible without us. Yet, until the war's conclusion, women on the battlefield faced the constant threat of capture, imprisonment in concentration camps, and even execution. Welcome to History on Fleek. Today, I'll be exploring the Nazi regime's treatment of captured female soldiers. Women were a critical component of the armed forces during World War II. Nations such as Britain, the United States, and the Soviet Union integrated women into their military, assigning them essential roles like mechanics, pilots, radio operators, clerks, and nurses. Furthermore, women served with distinction as spies and resistance fighters. Of all the nations that enlisted women, the Soviet Union had the largest contingent, with an estimated 800,000 women serving in the Russian forces, many in combat roles like snipers and pilots. Despite their courage and valor, every soldier faces the risk of capture as a prisoner of war. Throughout the conflict, numerous female soldiers were captured by the Nazis, and many became renowned for their harrowing experiences. The Night Witches, an all-female combat squadron, are among the most celebrated figures of the war. Formed at a time when women were excluded from combat in the Soviet Union, Marina Raskova personally appealed to Joseph Stalin and secured permission to establish female combat units. Starting in late 1941, these air units, comprised mainly of teenage and young adult volunteers, took to the skies. Officially known as the 588th Night Bomber Regiment, their missions demanded exceptional skill, requiring them to operate deep within enemy airspace. Their signature tactic of idling their engines near the target and gliding to the bomb release point, using only the wind, created a sound likened to broomsticks by German soldiers, thus earning them their nickname. Over the course of the war, the regiment flew approximately 30,000 hours and dropped over 3,000 tons of bombs. These missions were incredibly perilous, and many of these brave pilots were captured by the Nazis. Facing concentration camps or execution, the Nazis' first true encounter with women in combat occurred during the invasion of Russia in June 1941. While the Russians were caught off guard by the audacious invasion, the Germans were equally surprised to discover a significant number of women within the Russian ranks. This was a novel experience for the Nazis, who hadn't encountered female soldiers in their previous invasions and occupations of Poland, France, and Norway. Their reaction was a blend of shock and disdain at the sight of women bearing arms and operating weaponry. The sheer scale of female involvement, however, was the most startling aspect for the Nazis. Approximately 200,000 women would receive decorations for their battlefield contributions, with 89 awarded the Hero of the Soviet Union, the highest military honor. Taken aback and seemingly appalled by these capable women in uniform, the German High Command reacted with utter contempt. On June 29, 1941, Field Marshal Günther von Kluge issued the infamous order to execute all captured female soldiers. Disturbingly, these orders didn't originate from the SS or Gestapo, but from field commanders. It took approximately 4 months for these orders, disseminated by commanders like Field Marshal Walter von Reichenau and 75th Division General Ernst Hammer, to become standard practice. Thus, the fate of these brave women on the Eastern Front was sealed, not by high command directives, but by the prejudiced attitudes of Nazi soldiers on the ground, unable to accept the concept of women in military service. Astonishingly, during their invasion of the Eastern Front, German forces captured an estimated 6 million prisoners of war, nearly half of whom perished. The Geneva Convention was essentially disregarded. Hundreds of thousands of prisoners were left to starve. For an army that touted its professionalism, the Nazi forces behaved more like a band of ideologically driven thugs. Viewed through the distorted lens of an enemy who couldn't fathom women in uniform, Russian female soldiers became the most vulnerable POWs, condemned to be shot upon capture. Many endured horrific abuse before their execution. While many understood their dire situation, accounts suggest that numerous Russian women were prepared to take their own lives rather than be captured by Nazi forces. Many women, like those mentioned, displayed extraordinary bravery and resilience in the face of enemy capture. Their stories stand as a testament to the courage and commitment of female soldiers during World War II. Christina Scarbeck, considered by many to be exceptionally brave, was a Polish agent working for the British Special Operations Executive. She served as a courier for the Polish resistance and was the first female agent in the service. Scarbeck's extensive espionage work took her across Nazi-occupied Europe. Her ingenuity and success paved the way for greater female recruitment during the war. Captured by the Gestapo, Scarbeck used her quick wit and strategic thinking to avoid a grim fate. Arrested with a fellow agent by Hungarian police in Budapest, in January 1941, she feigned symptoms of pulmonary tuberculosis during Gestapo interrogation. By biting her tongue to draw blood, she convinced the doctor, securing her release. Britain's most daring spy remains one of the most remarkable female war heroes. Inayat Khan, a British agent and radio operator for the Special Operations Executive in France, operated under the codename Madeleine. Khan was admired for her straightforwardness, and her commitment to nonviolence motivated her to join the SOE. However, this principle placed her in some of the war's most dangerous situations. Betrayed during her undercover work in France, she was captured by the Gestapo in 1943. Known as a defiant and uncooperative prisoner, she and 3 other women were transported to Dachau concentration camp in 1944, where they were executed. Posthumously awarded the George Cross for her bravery, a memorial bust of Inayat Khan stands in London. Reba Whittle embodies the fearless bravery of countless women in World War II, highlighting the paradoxical sexism they faced. Joining the U.S. Army as a nurse in June 1941, Whittle trained as a flight nurse, a new and dangerous role. Retrieving wounded soldiers from the battlefield, often assuming a doctor's responsibilities, all while aboard an aircraft vulnerable to enemy fire, required immense courage. In September 1943, Lieutenant Whittle's C-47 strayed 40 miles off course to rescue wounded soldiers, carrying only supplies and unmarked as a medical flight. Flying alone over enemy territory near Aachen, her aircraft was hit by German flak, wounding Whittle and the pilot, and killing another crew member. The plane crashed in German territory, and although Whittle and the surviving crew initially evaded capture, they were eventually surrounded and taken prisoner. After receiving treatment for their injuries at a nearby hospital, Whittle found herself facing a peculiar predicament. As the only American woman captured by the enemy in the European theater, the Nazis were completely baffled as to how to handle her as a POW. Ironically, this patriarchal confusion may have saved her life. After recovering, Whittle was transferred to Stalag 9C, a Nazi POW camp, but not as a prisoner. Instead, she was assigned to work as a nurse. The International Red Cross learned of her situation and informed the U.S. State Department. In January 1945, Whittle was released to the Allies and returned to the U.S. Army, receiving the Purple Heart for her valor. In a world where women were consistently underestimated, Reba Whittle found a way to serve and survive, always prioritizing the well-being of others. This is History on Fleek, and I'll see you next time.